Mr. Renato de Freitas Souza from Federal Prosecutor Office in Brazil.
Is it on here? Hi, good morning. I'm very glad that it seems that in the Brazilian system we have much similar institution, a very similar structure to what Jean-François has presented today. First I'm going to talk about what exactly is my job in Brazil. I work in an institution called Ministério Público. It is considered by the Brazilian Constitution as an essential function to achieve justice. It's an independent institution, but a public institution in the state structure, but independent from the government and with an independent budget proposed by the institution and approved by Congress. And its main functions are the crimes accusation, but not only that, but also to protect and defend collective rights such as the environment, education, social security, public health, and including water management. And for example, in Brazil, in the legal system, anyone can move a kind of class action to protect the environment, but it's a very difficult task. For example, even the actions about environmental, they always need technical support, and it's very expensive, and environmental law is very difficult. Not everyone has the ability to defend it correctly. The Ministério Público was created in the Constitution of 1988 because our society was still recovering from dictatorship and civil society was not well organized. So they gave these powers to this institution to defend societies against government abuse. But even nowadays, civil society organizations, instead of moving class actions themselves, many times they count on Ministério Público to do this job. Especially because of the lack of transparency in the government actions in all its levels, and because of the great difficulty to obtain information. Lots of bureaucracy and this kind of stuff. Well, it's similar to the work done, for those who are familiar with it, it's similar to the work done by the Defensorias del Pueblo in Iberic and Latin American countries, or the ombudsman figure, but we also have the power to move actions in justice. So it's a fundamental institution to guarantee protection of environmental balance and natural resources preservation for future generations, including water. We can start formal civil investigations in which we can demand information, technical support, inspections. We can take formal testimonies, do public hearings, and disobeying these orders, which are needed to instruct these civil investigators, it constitutes a crime. So that is the advantage for Brazilian society to be defended by this institution, because we have the adequate weapons to deal with government abuse, and which many times the society and the individuals do not. So when these investigations conclude, we have a lot of instruments to achieve these goals. We can make recommendations to improve the public services destined to the executive power. We can also move class actions and make or arrange formal agreements. They're called behavior adjustment compromise terms, which if not complied, they can be executed directly in justice. So we can also call society, scientists, universities in public hearings when we are doing these agreements, so they can give their opinion about it to see if it attends their wishes. And for example, in the region where I work, I'm responsible to move civil and criminal actions to defend the Federal Reservation Forest Unit, which is in the mountains near Rio de Janeiro, and it's a region that's protected since the 19th century because this forest protects the water resources to supply all of Rio metropolitan zone. So in that time, in 19th century, they were cutting all the forests, the Atlantic woods, and then the whole city started to flood and also to lack water. So it's vital to avoid natural disasters and also to maintain the water supplies. So we move actions against invaders, hunters, deforestation, people who build constructions inside these reservations, and who build in river margins or on top of water springs. Yeah, it happens a lot, unfortunately. And I personally have worked in criminal actions against Petrobras, the oil Brazil company, for dumping oil in Rio de Janeiro's Guanabara Bay. And in the capital branch of Rio de Janeiro, I actually don't work in the capital, I work in the metropolitan zone of Rio with the more poor towns. So in the capital branch, the state water company and water and sanitation company was condemned in justice to give adequate treatment to sewer. Up until last year, they considered an adequate disposal of the sewer to throw it into the sea through an emissary submarine with no treatment at all. It was considered an adequate disposal. So now they are obliged to really treat the sewer before throwing it into the sea. So now I'm going to talk a little about the Brazilian law about water governance and basic sanitation. We have basically one law about water governance, another about basic sanitation, and we also have another system that is called civil defense system. It's a system to prevent and recover from natural disasters. There are some very positive things about Brazilian law in water governance, and many things, as I said, are similar to the system that Jean-François has showed. We have a federal water agency and many state water agencies that regulate water utilization, and the federal agency basically sets the national policies and manages the national water resources information system and regulates and authorizes the use of water in federal rivers, which are the rivers that go through more than one Brazilian state, or the ones which are located inside federal reservations units. So, and the states, the Brazilian states, basically are responsible for providing basic sanitation and water supply through public companies or public-private partnering. So it can be both. It makes no difference. The water resources national policy is based on some foundations, some objectives and directives, such as water is a good under public domain. Water is a limited natural resource with economical value. In scarcity context, the water resources priority use is for consumption for human and animal. Water resources management must always proportionate water's multiple uses. And the basin river system is the territorial unit to implement the water resources national policy and enact the water resources management national systems. And water resources governance must be decentralized and count with participation of government, users, and communities. So the objectives are to secure to current and future generations the necessary availability of water patterns adequate to its respective uses, rational and integrated use of water resources, including water transport as well, to achieve sustainable development, and prevention and defense against hydrological critic events of natural origin or which are due to inadequate use of natural resources, such as floods and drought and landslides. And some general actions directives are predicted in the law to implement the water resources national policy, like systematic governance of water resources associated to aspects of quality and quantity. And the water resources governance must be adequate to the physical and biological, demographic, economic, social, and cultural diversities in the many different regions of Brazil, because it's a continental dimension, so it has to respect all of these regions. You have the Amazon, the rainforests. You have the Northeast is a very arid region with very scarcity of water resources, and so there's all these differences that have to be respected. So, as the instruments to implement these water resources policies, we have the water resources plans. So, in each instance, there must be a plan. The water must be classified in categories according to its main uses, and there is the authorization of the right to use water resources and charging for the use of water resources. I don't believe there can be good water governance nowadays without charging for the use of water. I think the question is how to do it in each country, in each reality, but I really don't think it can be done without charging for the use, especially in a scarcity context. And the water resources information system, as it said, you can't manage, you can't decide if you don't have the adequate information. So these water resources plans that have to be done elaborated in many instances, states and federal, they have to contain the diagnosis of the water resources current status and the analysis of demographic growth, productive activities evolution, and modification of soil occupation patterns. Also, the balance between availability and future demands of water resources in quantities and in quality as well, and identify possible conflicts in the use of water. The goals of rationalization of use, quantity increase, quality improvement of available water resources, and the measures to attain these goals, and priorities for authorization of right to use the water resources, and directives and criteria to charge for the use of water resources. So there's all this issue about charging for the use. So the law already says who is subjected to demand the authorization and to pay for this, and those who don't need to do it. So any case of derivation, catchment, captation of portions of water existing in a water body, or for water final consumption, including even public supply or inputs in productive process, water extraction on underground aquifers to final consumption or inputs in productive process, launching sewer or other liquid, soil or gas effluent residues in a water body, aiming its dilution, its transport, or its final disposal, and exploits of hydroelectrical potentials. This is an issue that it's very, very controversial because it has a myth that the hydroelectrical power is a clean energy and it would be free of environmental impacts. But it's clean such in the sense that it doesn't create the gases that contribute to the climatic changes. But not even this is completely true, because sometimes they have to flood very big areas of forest, and these trees decompose underwater and produce methane gas. So it's not free or totally free of these gases. And many times small towns cease to exist, they have to be totally removed, and indigenous people are taking from their lands, sometimes against their will. So, Brazil invests a lot in hydroelectrical power, but the more we do it, the more we are limiting our water resources for the future. So it's something that really has to be thought. How much can we build more hydroelectrical plants without compromising these water resources for the future? It's something that has to be really well thought about. And any other uses that alter the regimen, quantity or quality of water existing in a water body should also be subjected to the authorization for the right to use and charging. So the following uses don't need these authorizations. It's the use of water resources to satisfy small rural towns' needs, and any use that is deemed insignificant. The amount is going to be set, if this is insignificant or not, it will depend on the river basin. It will be decided within the river basin committees. So when I talk about the state structures, I'm going to explain a little better. So, and the authorization of right to use the water resources for electrical energy generation, it has some other specific, it has to be on the National Water Resources Plan. It cannot be done only if it's on the state water resources plan. And any authorization of the use of water resources must preserve their multiple uses. When you give this authorization, it's not exclusive for anyone. So, and the values that are collected with charging, they will be applied with priority on the river basin in which they were generated and used in financing studies, programs and projects, and construction works included on the water resources plans. Any project that uses water must be according to the water plan. And these values that are collected with the charge of use may also be used for paying for implementation and administrative costs of the organizations and entities which integrate the National Water Resources Management System. That's what I'm going to talk about now, the National Water Resources Management System. So we have a Water Resources National Council, and it's composed by representatives of the federal government and federal ministries and secretaries related to water management, such as the Ministry of Energy, the Ministry of Environment, and their representatives elected by the states' councils and representatives of water resources users, and also representatives of NGOs related to water resources. And the law says that the representatives of the federal and state governments cannot exceed half the members of the council. So it has to be half government and half civil society. And its main functions are to decide conflicts between the state's councils and articulate the water resources plannings, national, regional, states, and the users. It can analysis any legislation alteration proposal and establish main directives, main national directives, decide about projects in water management that impact more than one state, approve and monitor the National Water Resources Plan, establish general criteria to authorize and charge for the right to use the water resources, and its president is the Minister of Environment. So yesterday there was some questions that who should manage, if there should be someone specifically about water, but in Brazilian system, the president of the National Water Resources Council is the Environment Minister. and the executive secretary is the person inside the environment minister responsible for water-related issues. And such as the Water National Council, there's the Water States Council, each state has one, and there are the River Basins Committees. So these committees are responsible to promote the debate about issues related to the water resources in each river basin, and decide in first instance the conflicts involving water resources, approve the river basin water plan, and monitor execution, and suggest the necessary measures to achieve its goals. And also propose to the national and states councils these insignificant uses for the purpose of not needing the authorization and not needing to pay for the right to use the water. So it is decided at local level. In each river basin, they will check all of the reality, the social, cultural, environmental reality, to decide which kinds of uses are going to be deemed insignificant for not needing to request the authorization and not needing to pay for the right to use. And the river basins are also composed by representatives of the federal, the state, and the municipalities, governments. The municipalities can only influence in water resources management through the river basin committees. They don't decide at local level. It is very difficult to find a water resource that affects only one municipality. It is usually affects more than one, so it's the only way they can participate in the decisions about water governance. And when we are dealing with international rivers, there must be a member from the Foreign Affairs Ministry also in the River Basin Committee. And rivers that go through indigenous communities must also have members from these indigenous communities in the River Basin Committee, and also from the Federal Indigenous Communities Foundation. So each River Basin Committee has a water agency that's like the executive secretary, and there's also the National Water Agency that I mentioned in the beginning. It's composed of 5 members directory with 4-year mandates. They have fixed mandates. The president cannot dismiss them like a minister anytime he wants. So its director also has a 4-year mandate. So that's basically our water resources governance law. And we also have the basic sanitation law. It sets the public sanitation services will also attend to some principles, like universal access with expansion of access by all residents to basic sanitation. Water distribution and sewer sanitation system must be adequate to public health and environmental protection. Historically, Brazil has used a unitary system. The plumbing lines to rainwater drainage were shared for the sewer lines. So all of this sewer used to be thrown into the sea with no treatment. And this is starting to change from 2007 with this new law from nowadays. So this law, it also predicts the social tariffs, social fares. So in some locations, in slums or in small towns, they also, the cost of public sanitation is lower, and in richer regions, it has a bigger price. So it also has the social control, safety, quality, and regularity, and it brings the legal definition of basic sanitation, which covers water supply, sewage sanitary system, and rainwater management and drainage. So also about the charging, the institution of fares, public prices and taxes to basic sanitations will observe some principles, like a priority of attendance of essential functions related to public health, extension of citizens' access in low-income localities to services, generation of necessary resources to implement investments to achieve the services goals, avoid superfluous consumption and waste of resources, and recover the costs of efficient services. And it also says that the system must be self-sustainable. So the values that are collected through charging for these services must sustain the system as a whole. But it is also possible to give subsidies to cover these poor zones or where they can't afford to pay for these public charges. And another thing that is that in the poor municipalities, many of the construction work to implant sewage, plumbing lines, and basic sanitation related construction work, they always need federal investments. But these federal investments can only be done if these activities are predicted in the water resource plan or in the basic sanitation plan. It cannot be done if it's not on the plan. And also, if these projects obey the principles predicted by the law, such as increasing access to poor people and all these principles. So I think that sums up the presentation. The other things I would have to say would be about the recommendation text. I don't know if that's the time, but I think it's going to be after the break.
I think after the coffee break we will discuss about our recommendations. So I think I can invite you for one question if we have it now, or we should do the break and come back. So I would say 11:15. 11:15, let's have 30 minutes to think about everything we learned and heard this morning, and then continue to discuss about it after the break with the questions and contributions.